Thank you to all my channel members, including my fan appreciation level members and my contributor level members, for helping support the YouTube channel. Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my book review of the new release book, Star Wars The Last Order, by Kwambe Mbalia. And I apologize if I butchered that pronunciation. But this is the new release YA Star Wars book. If everything goes as it looks like it is, this is the last Star Wars YA book by Disney-Lucasfilm Press. They're actually moving the YA books over to Delacorte, it looks like, from Random House. But this book is a YA book from Disney-Lucasfilm Press, and it's supposed to be about Finn and Janna, and it was partially marketed as being a post-Rise of Skywalker novel. And so a bunch of us were really excited to see one of the first post-Rise of Skywalker books. And then we got this one. And it's not really a post-Rise of Skywalker book. 85% of this book takes place before Force Awakens, is a flashback, and then about 15% of the book, very little of it, maybe like 50 or 60 pages out of 450, is actually set after the Rise of Skywalker. The first chapter is, and then there's a chapter in the middle, and then it's pretty much the end of the book, the last 2 or 3 chapters at the end. So it's not much of the book that is set after Rise of Skywalker, so I don't want you to get your hopes up too much. But that being said, I had low expectations because even though there have been some good YA books that I've loved, I just have not had a lot of ones that I've loved, and just as a whole, I felt this fatigue about the YA line. And so I was very apprehensive going into this book. I really was. And, I was supposed to give every book a fair chance, and I said, I'm going to give it a fair chance, even though I've not loved the other books in the YA line so far. And I'm so glad I went in with a open mind, because this book is actually pretty entertaining. Now, is it a top tier book? No, but it's an entertaining book. And so let's go through talking about it. So the majority of the book is a flashback. You are seeing 2 different stories happening that it alternates between. You have Finn's story. It's about Finn being assigned to be a patrolman, a guard, basically, for Major Goal, who is he's basically like the ISB of the First Order, and he is trying to help Major Goal as he goes around doing propaganda stuff and securing resources for the First Order. And then we also see the story of Janna, who we saw from Rise of Skywalker. We see her as she is a squad leader of new stormtroopers, and she and her squad are assigned to a few things, and you see her, both Janna and Finn, gradually take steps toward rebellion. For Finn, you see his character come to doubt people in the First Order. You don't necessarily see Finn take rebellious steps, but you do see Finn take action that shows that he has good character. And you see him slowly start to doubt people that everyone in the First Order is good. And it plants the seeds for what he will do in The Force Awakens. A lot of us, when we watch Force Awakens, we're like, man, he has a really sudden change. Like, he was a stormtrooper doing stormtrooper stuff, and then all of a sudden, bam, he has like a switch flip, and he's like a good guy now. This book really puts a lot of context to that and makes it make sense, which I like. And then with Janna's character, you actually do see her do rebellion. You actually, if you remember watching The Rise of Skywalker, you'll remember that she talks about the Battle of Ensign Island. You do see that at the end of this book. So you do see her and her squad, which her dynamic with the squad was great. I think Kwambe did a really good job of writing the character dynamics of the First Order. He really understood how the First Order stormtroopers would talk with each other. He really got their kind of sense of camaraderie. At the beginning, it was a little bit nerve-wracking because they're all called by their numbers, and I was thinking, oh my goodness, is this gonna be too much? Is this gonna be too hard to follow all the characters? But once I figured out that FN, or maybe it was T, whatever the first part of it, once I realized that 1719 was Janna, then it made sense. She's called Boss in the book, and you have her squad. Thank goodness her squad comes up with some nicknames. Thank goodness they did that, because otherwise that would have been much harder to follow. And then Finn, because they keep saying in The Force Awakens FN2187, he doesn't have a nickname because he hasn't gotten his nickname yet, but that was the one number. I was like, I know who FN2187 is. In fact, one of my friends online, Dan SW Centralized, he's a great guy. He also has a YouTube channel. Check it out. But Dan actually tweeted out a joke, and he said, we all know about FN2187, but what about, does anyone ask about FN2167? And at first I was like, wait a second, is that a character in the book? And then I thought, oh, it's a 6-7 joke. Ha! This can be really dated into this video in the future. But anyway, I thought of that. But the book, once you get kind of into it, after the first couple of chapters was a little bit apprehensive with the First Order stuff, but then everything clicks and it works really smoothly. So I really liked that part of the book. As I said, about 10 to 15% of the book is set after the events of Rise of Skywalker. And basically what happens is this messenger brings in this message about this major goal surviving. And all of a sudden, Finn, Janna, and a few other new characters basically go on a trip to basically find out if Major Goal survived. So you see how terrible Major Goal is in the book. He's the main villain of the book, but then you see whether or not he survived. And that storyline, the frame storyline, which is this post-Rise of Skywalker, had enormous potential to be a top-tier story. The problem was it's only 10 or 15% of the book. And because of that, it doesn't have time to breathe. And so we get there, the thing happens, it's super quick, resolution happens, and it was like, man, really wish we had this was an actual story and not just a short story, because it really is like short story or novella length, when that should have been the novel. And I understand the framing of it and wanting to do flashbacks as well. And I'm not necessarily saying that the flashbacks had to be cut. I think you probably could cut some of the flashback scenes. I think that that's possible, although I think that they all worked for the story. I just think that they should have added some scenes post-Rise of Skywalker for two reasons. One is to make the story work better, but also that's kind of the reason that people bought the book, was because they thought they were getting a post-Rise of Skywalker book, and it kind of feels a little dishonest marketing, and maybe if you'd done a little more 50, 100 more pages of the post-Rise of Skywalker, people wouldn't have been so shocked by it. They would have been like, oh, it's half and half. But instead, it's like 85-15, and that just doesn't work as well. So the balance of the book is way off. It really is. The main story of the book is the flashback. The post-Rise of Skywalker is just like, oh yeah, we need to have something post-Rise of Skywalker to get people to read it. But I did like that post-Rise of Skywalker stuff. I just wanted more. I just felt like, man, there's something between two characters that happens. And I'm like, if we had spent much more time with those two characters and we had really seen their dynamic and the way that they interact with Finn and Janna, man, it would have worked so much better. So it just needed more. So this book should have been actually like 550 to 600 pages. I know that's crazy long for a Star Wars book, but that's what it should have been. Although this is still shorter than the adult novels because of the font size and stuff. But it should have been a longer book to fit in that stuff. So I had some criticisms just now. But it was an enjoyable read. I thought that he understood the Stormtrooper dynamics. I thought the story that he was telling was good. I thought that he never stayed with one thing too long. He did a good job of jumping from story to story, and it never felt like he was jumping at the wrong time. He paced out the book pretty well, so I do give props to the author for that. And so I did enjoy the book quite a bit. It's not a top-tier YA book, but it's much better than it had any right to be. I will also say this book has a lot of sequel-era references, particularly if you've read the novel Phasma. I think that you'll appreciate all of those references. Although, so much of this book is referencing the character. Of course, Cardinal shows up, and a few other connections to Phasma. But Phasma herself is just referenced all the time, and it was like, if you had actually had her show up more, I think it would have worked better. But regardless of my criticisms, I actually quite enjoyed the book. I recommend it, especially if you want the sequel trilogy to matter more. I think that this adds to this makes both The Rise of Skywalker and The Force Awakens a bit better. For Rise of Skywalker, it makes Janna's story a lot better, and for Force Awakens, it makes Finn's story a lot better. So if you've read this book, let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. And until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.